Mr. McCauley, for 5 minutes, please.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Noseworthy, how long did you work with Mr. Nobley when he was Deputy Minister?
I began work with Mr. Nubley in 2016.
Just a simple answer, please. How many years, please?
Yeah, I'm just trying to work it out in my head, sir. My apologies. I believe about 5 years. 4 or 5 years.
So let me ask you, he stated that you met often and that he was your eyes and ears on the board. Did you bring up the issue of the conflicts with him at all? You obviously worked together a long time. You met many times together. The whole public service operates under the basic and the guiding principle of risk aversion and CYA, and you know what the A stands for, basically cover your backside. So did you bring this up, these conflict issues, with the Deputy Minister?
Mr. Chair, if conflict issues had become apparent to me or were made apparent to me by STTC, I would have immediately raised them with the Deputy Minister.
So you didn't raise anything. Now, I'm going to ask, we had Ms. Colbeck, who's the Vice President, with us on Monday. She, like you, like Mr. Nobley and everyone else, seems to been completely, like Tommy Rockhopper, blind, deaf, and dumb to the conflicts of interest, stating, accepting no accountability or responsibility. But she did state that conflicts were minuted from the board meetings that you were at. And yet you seem to be saying that there were no conflicts that you were aware of. Could you explain that to us, please?
My understanding is that when a conflict...
Your understanding. I'm asking a simple question. The Vice President, Ms. Colbeck, stated the conflicts were minuted at the meeting you were at. You were at all the meetings. She stated the conflicts were minuted. So you were at this meeting, so conflicts were discussed. What did you do with those conflicts?
When I became aware that conflicts were minuted and they were dealt with in due process, I saw no need to bring them further. It was a matter within the purview of the organization and its conflict of interest.
You talked about your role being ensuring the administration of the contribution agreement. Article 20.03 of the contribution agreement states very clearly that conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest have to be reported to the Minister of Industry. So you were aware of these conflicts. You were there to administer the oversight of the contribution agreements. Did you report these conflicts, as you were required to in the contribution agreement, Article 20.03, did you report these to the Minister?
Mr. Chair, my understanding of the...
I'm not asking your understanding. I'm asking, did you do your job? You stated you were there for the administration of the contribution agreement. The contribution agreement states very clearly conflicts of interest have to be reported to the Minister. Did you?
By the organization, sir. By the organization.
Right. So you thought, it's someone else's job. Even though you stated you were there to ensure the administration of the contribution agreement. But that's not your job. You knew about the conflict, but it's not your job.
I saw my responsibility as I have stated here. If I had seen any deviation from conflict of interest obligations, as I've indicated, I would have reported them. I saw it as the obligation on the organization to report to the Minister because that's what the contribution agreement says.
It's his job to do it. $400 million, the taxpayers' money, but it's someone else's job to do it, and you were aware of it, but it's someone else's job. We had I mentioned before to Ms. Colbeck, we had a low-level or lower-level person in the public service brave enough to be a whistleblower and come forward to you as well. But you didn't have that bravery, and you didn't see it as your job for oversight, even though you stated earlier today that part of your role was to ensure the administration of the contribution agreement. But I guess not necessarily.
Mr. Chair, the whistleblower never came to me. I'm not aware of the work of the whistleblower, and I never spoke to that person.
I think it was your role as an ADM who does have fiduciary duties under the Financial Administration Act to act on this. You just thought it was someone else's job. Like, who should have done that then?
As I've indicated, I saw the responsibility on
Let me-
reporting
let me-
conflicts.
let
of
me
interest.
just ask you-
Mr. Colley, you're out of time, but why don't, that's a pertinent question. Whose job was it? Why don't you answer that, Mr. Noseworthy, and then we'll move on.
Yes, as I was saying, that I saw that as an obligation of the organization to report to the minister consistent with the terms of the contribution agreement.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clerk,
up
could you
next-
lead us off for 5, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Noseworthy, you're clearly of a similar age as me, so you will appreciate this analogy. There appears to have been a Roadrunner Acme anvil dropped on the Coyote on every bloody meeting in this, and you seem to have missed it. I don't quite get it, and on terms of conflicts of interest. But I'm gonna ask you. I have spoken to a number of the past board chairs, and and I've had some interesting conversations, and one of them shared with me as an interesting story, and I'd like to ask you this question based on that conversation. Did you ever ask a sitting chair of SDTC for a job?
No.
That's not what this chair said to me. I will move on then, because you're aware that doing so would be a breach of the ethics code of the public service.
I certainly did not.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Let's get back to this issue of former SDTC CEO's testimony on this and on the appointment of Ms. Verschaeren. And she testified before Parliament and said that it was you that informed her that Ms. Verschaeren would be appointed and would replace Mr. Balsillie.
Yes, I was asked by the Deputy Minister's office to call her and inform her that an order in council had been cut appointing Ms. Verschaeren to the position.
I think this was before that, because she expressed her concern, according to her testimony, to you about the conflict of interest, and it took several weeks to get back to her, where she testified that then again you confirmed that in spite of the conflicts, she was going to be appointed.
I recall two conversations with the former CEO on Ms. Verschaeren and her conflict. The first was when she informed me that Ms. Verschaeren was a candidate and that she had informed Ms. Verschaeren that she should seek the advice of the Conflicts and Ethics Commissioner. And the second was the conversation I just described.
And you mentioned the deputy's office told you to say this. We couldn't quite get that out of either of the two deputies. Who in the deputy's office told you to tell Ms. Lawrence this?
And I don't recall. It's a common practice to inform the CEO
Deputy?
Of that type of a decision. I suspect that was at the time that Mr. Nubley was in the process of retiring. I suspect it was someone within his office, perhaps the corporate secretary or someone else. I don't recall the specifics.
Could you, who would that have been, the corporate for Mr. Nubley?
I can't recall the name, sir, but I'm sure the department can provide it.
Okay, we will follow that up. So, did you say to her that the conflicts will be managed?
I don't recall ever using that term in a discussion with Ms. Lawrence. When I advised her, as she has reported, that Ms. Verschaeren was to be appointed, or had been appointed, she expressed concern about the conflicts. I'm sure we talked at that time about the importance of the organization having solid conflict of interest.
So were you aware that Mr. Emet had applied or been considered and was rejected before Ms. Verschaeren was the president?
No.
Or was the chair, I should say? You don't? But you do recall him being appointed after Ms. Verschaeren, because Ms. Lawrence testified that he was rejected because of his conflicts, and then after Ms. Verschaeren was appointed where managed conflicts would be in, she testified that he was then put back on the list to be a director now that conflicts were okay.
I have no knowledge of that.
You have no knowledge of that. Another Acme sort of squashing thing happening here. You remember quite a lot of details about your expertise or thoughts about how good this organization was, but you don't seem to remember any of the meetings that you attended when it came to conflicts of interest, when everybody was having to leave that meeting. Somebody, every meeting, at least several, were having to leave and recuse themselves. There must have been a lot of wind blowing by as they went out the door before their colleagues voted them more money. And then you never said anything. Like, it's incredulous to believe this, that you would sit there and say nothing to anyone about this. Now, I'll ask you once again, or ask you, do you regret now never having raised these issues of conflicts of interest with your direct supervisor? And by the way, did you get a bonus every one of those years you were on this board?
Mr. Chair, I could only speak to my deputy minister about what I saw in front of me. The conflicts of interest, which have since come to light with the organization, were not obvious to me. They were not presented in a way that caused me sufficient concern.
And the second part of my question?
I think I received compensation, which includes an annual performance bonus that is similar to every other ADM in the federal system.
Thank you very much.